Hi everybody, welcome to my next video. I know that in that last video when I was talking about eating at the Buca in Florence, my favorite word in that video was pretty much. Is just one of those things where after what's been going on lately, I've been having a little trouble focusing, It's nothing personal, trust me. It's just, one of those, well, things. As I also mentioned at the beginning of that other video, well, like I said, I was going to elaborate on, why I wasn't going to discuss what I was going to discuss in this video or bring it up in that last video, because it's like one of those things that I just wanted to say separately here. I will say this much before I go into what I want to talk about on here. This is about crime and punishment. The easiest way to explain it. And I have a playlist called like crime and punishment or something here on my playlist, and then there's like where I talk about Strange, Silly, and Stupid from the 859. This video is going to end up in both of those playlists, so yeah, you might want to go watch those playlists too after if you haven't seen them previously. But that aside, I'm going to talk about something here that's got a lot to do with crime and punishment. Well, unless of course you've been living under a rock or been in a coma and just woke up, or you live in a community that has no internet, phones, or TVs, like I'd say it's the Amish, or the Quakers, you'll know that on this past Monday, April the 15th, 2013, there was these two former Russian guys that were here in America that set off some bombs at the Boston Marathon up there in Boston, Massachusetts. Of course, everybody knows, or should know, that the elder brother got shot and killed by the police as that brother was trying to get away from the police. And then the younger brother was badly hurt and is now in the hospital recovering from his injuries. I want to first talk about what they've been talking about on the news in relation to the two brothers, the brother's family in Russia, and related things to the bombing, sort of. And then I want to talk about my thoughts as like the cell phone systems crashing on this past Monday up there in Boston, and other related things to that. Just for the sake of ease on my part, just because, some of these folks have got names that I can't pronounce, I'm just going to use the bombers' first names and then talk about what else I've heard in the news lately. Well, of course, the elder brother's first name was Tamerlan. Tamerlan, from what accounts I've read, and heard on the radio or television, was a nice fellow, and then in like 2009, Tamerlan started going off the deep end in relation to his religion beliefs. Tamerlan was also hanging out with a fella named Misha, who had recently converted to Islam, and Misha was promoting radical Islamic ideas even to Tamerlan. And from the information that I've seen online and heard on the radio, it appears that Tamerlan finally became so disenfranchised with living here in the United States that he decided to blow up some buildings in Boston last week. And he also was on two terrorist watch lists as well. Really. One thing that I would have just loved to ask Tamerlan before this event happened this past Monday on the 15th of April is, well, Tamerlan, if you just hate this country so much, then why don't you go back to wherever it is that you've come from and live there, or go to another country of your choice and live there instead? Something else too, since you've lived here in this country for like 10 years or so, what has made you dislike this country so much that you want to do what you're contemplating doing, blowing up the stuff in Boston? Another thing, dude, if you're having so much issues with this country, why don't you blog about them, shoot videos, then post them to YouTube discussing these issues in public, or find a peaceful and constructive way of handling your anger and frustration with this country, like starting a peaceful protest or something along those lines. According to official reports, Tamerlan said he didn't like this country anymore because of like greed, self-righteousness, and some other stuff of the people of this country, or something to that general effect. I just think that in this day and age, if Tamerlan was that unhappy with this country, why didn't he quote-unquote do something about it in a more positive way? Is like I would have asked him, as I mentioned before. If I could have talked with him about it, that's what I would have asked Tamerlan. As for Tamerlan's younger brother, Dokazar, or however his name is pronounced, it's been made pretty clear that Dokazar was following his elder brother's lead, and Dokazar was doing what Tamerlan was doing with making bombs, etc. Even when both guys should have thought about what the repercussions would be, and were, when the two men would be caught by authorities here in this country. Speaking of being arrested, Dokazar has been, of course by another official report, officially been Mirandized by a U.S. judge and a U.S. District Attorney earlier today after Dokazar had been talking like a minor bird with police for like 16 hours previously, and Dokazar had been explaining himself and Tamerlan's actions to the police. Something else of note here is that both men's parents over in Russia, Anzor and Zudabayat, are in Russia, and Anzor, the man's dad, has stated that he, Anzor, is going to come here to the United States and bury his eldest son, then talk with his youngest son in the hospital, not to mention talking with the police about the two men and their outburst. Zudabayat, the men's mom, has started screaming that her two sons are innocent of the charges, and the two men are being framed for the bombing in Boston. Almost said Austin. Don't think so. Try Boston. One thing to point out to Zudabayat is, well, if that's the case, then your one son will be exonerated if he's really truly innocent, and as you claim he is here, and that your eldest son has paid the price for not cooperating with the police by having resisted arrest and then shooting at the police and throwing things at them and what have you. Apparently, Tamerlan didn't get the memo about not shooting or throwing things at police when the police show up at one's door to ask person questions. From what I've seen locally, like, over the Rhine here in Cincinnati, Ohio, the people that have made the police think that the police lives are in imminent danger, the people that were shooting at the police or waving weapons at the police or anything along those lines or menacing at the police at all, those folks have been shot and or tased for their behavior. Waving knives and guns and what have you at the police. From what I've seen on the news feed on Yahoo.com, Zudabayat is going to be a very popular lady if she was to put in an appearance here in this country in relation to what her sons have done lately. Not to mention that, Zudabayat is wanted in relation to shoplifting up there in Boston, in addition to what her two sons have been accused of doing up there in Boston. This whole thing with the bombing and those three poor souls that got killed, and the approximately 150 to 200 people that were seriously maimed, is just terrible. I really hope that Zodakar really explains himself and his brother's actions to the police and in the world, because there's some serious explaining that Zodakar has to do to the police and to us, to the rest of us, since people don't really understand the why behind the two men's actions, other than the elder brother, Tamerlan, wasn't a happy camper. Then Tamerlan just decided to blow people up and then get himself killed because he wanted to make a statement, and his younger brother, Zodakar, wanted to pitch in and help Tamerlan out for some reason, just because he was following his brother's lead. Now, as I mentioned at the beginning of this video, I want to talk about something in relation to the Boston bombing as it pertains to cell phones and media, such as, like internet, texting, and, being able to contact loved ones, and etc. in such a situation as what happened up there in Boston on Monday. And I'm sure, as I've mentioned previously in an earlier video here on this channel, Tony and I, just as an aside, happen to have a landline in addition to our cell phones, which, of course, I mentioned my cell phone in the last video, about having an app on there. One of the reasons, we have one of the reasons why we have a landline here is because we don't keep our cell phones always turned on, and, we also, turn our, cell phones off at night so we can charge them up. Our thought was about nighttime calls is if that somebody is just that hard up to talk to us, they can call our landline at night. Another reason why we have a landline here is that our cell phones don't always work in our condo. With getting a good enough or strong enough signal to where we can even get text messages through it all. They just, we just turn them off because there's like no point. The cell phone that Tony's currently using, it doesn't always work like it's supposed to. Even here, we have to stand in a certain spot to get it to even get a bar of signal. So, if our friends and family or thought is need to talk to us, or like work needs to call, they could call the house, because we're guaranteed to have a signal on our landline. And, now as far as that whole rant about the landline thing goes in relation to the Boston Marathon bombings go, here's the thing. Like, I heard that every cell phone carriers, like, Verizon, AT&T, Sprint, everybody, like even the big name ones, the cell carrier system in the Boston area crashed to where people couldn't get on their cell phones to call or text out to see where their friends and loved ones were at the time of the bombing, or even if they were okay. As somebody mentioned in one of those online news places said, quote, "This Boston bombing proves that even though most Gen Xers and younger generations are more tech-savvy in this day and age, it proves that the old standards like landlines and payphones are still a good thing because the landline system was still up and running, even though people were trying to text and call on their cell phones on April 15th and couldn't get through to the people on those, to people, their loved ones, on those cell phones and everything." My thought is that phone companies like Cincinnati Bell, for example, or like, Boston Bell or what have you, or AT&T, can make some extra money by putting payphones back up in major cities again in the event that something major, like, heaven forbid the Boston bombing happens again. Not that it would, hopefully. But then people would be at least able to call from a payphone and talk to a friend or a loved one on the phone, even if it's to leave a voicemail to tell them that you're okay and where you currently are located. The other thing is I'm also glad that the police caught the alleged perpetrators, well, sort of, in Tamerlan's case, in relation to this case, because unlike what happened with Osama bin Laden, where it took years and years to track bin Laden down and capture him, it was over in a week. Not even that long. I hope that we can get some serious, straight answers from Zodikar now that he's up and talking like a minor bird in the hospital. Or, well, he was, until he got Mirandized. I also wouldn't be surprised if this case goes into like a federal jurisdiction kind of case, since the FBI is involved with the case at this point. And all I can say in closing is that I hope that this Zodikar is made to completely and thoroughly explain himself and his brother's actions, not only to the police but to the public as well. Because I'm sure people everywhere, us here in America and China and everywhere else, is wanting to understand why this is happening. Well, I know that Zodikar's trial is going to be bigger than the O.J. Simpson murder trial was back in the 1990s, if and when it ever gets to trial, but we'll have to wait and see. Well, anyway, I want to thank you all for watching, and I hope you have a good day. Bye.